Welcome to this episode of The Wolf and the Shepherd. Today we're taking a trip down memory lane. I have absolutely no idea what this is all about. This is not a trick. This is not one of these deals where it's a stump the shepherd right out of the gate. But I've been told we're going to take a trip down memory lane. So let's go down memory lane.
Originally, I was going to call this podcast Chemical Memory, but after a little bit of research, I kind of figured that was very precise in terms of what we really wanted to cover, and we wanted to cover memory as a whole.
Oh, okay.
As a W-H-O-L-E,
not okay.
H-O-L-E.
All right, so we're talking about memories.
Memory.
Okay.
No, not memories, just memory, the function of memory.
Memories pressed between the pages. And so, yeah. And we're definitely not talking about the musical Cats, where they have that memory song.
Oh, that Elaine Page woman?
I
sang that song, Cats.
Yeah, but I do not want to talk about Cats. That gets me all bent out of shape, and then I get all angry, and I start throwing things and everything. So let's please not talk about Cats.
We are going to, on one podcast, talk about Cats, though.
Maybe that's going to be one of those
imperative
ones
that we...
you're going to have to do that by yourself.
Yeah,
I can't talk about Cats.
You
know how upset it's cats and Canadians. That's what gets me bent out of shape.
Yeah, I'm going to do a Zoom call with Squibbles the cat from Michigan.
Oh, let's not do that.
Yeah,
let's not do that.
So on the topic of memory, it's one of those topics where there's a lot of gray areas because it doesn't matter how many websites you click on from reputable sources as such. There is a lot of variation in the approach to, I guess, once you get outside of the basic agreed upon principles of what memory is and how it happens, that it flies off into a lot of different directions where people can't agree upon it, because it's, like with anything with the brain and the way it works, once it goes into different branches, with biology and psychology, etc., it crosses so many different disciplines that people can't necessarily agree.
Almost like our podcast, where we go down different rabbit holes all the time, even though we try not to do that.
Yeah.
But we fail horribly with it.
Well, I mean, this was actually one of the first podcasts we've done where, after doing some research, I feel I actually understand less about it than before I did it. But that was partly because of ignorance, but also some of the stuff I got thrown in front of me because I got so many different views on it where it just wasn't agreeing. Stuff I thought was kind of true before, I'm now kind of questioning whether it is true and whether I just took it from the wrong source originally.
Probably.
Right, yeah.
You probably did.
Yeah. So
let's be honest. Yeah, you probably did.
I probably did, yeah. I've got to get out of this, just read the first 10 results on Google and just take that as facts.
Are you down to 10 now? It used to be like 5 or 6 because you didn't want to scroll down. Now, are you scrolling down? Are you actually kind of getting out there and saying, I'm going to go ahead and roll that scroll wheel down on my mouse and see what's down past what's on my screen?
No, I actually set my text to smaller, so now I can see all the headings better, and so now I just click on the one which sounds or looks most interesting.
Okay, well that makes more logical sense.
So anyway, I wanted to give a basic background of what memory is, and it's actually not that complicated in terms of what's agreed upon. Like I said, it's just once we get outside of that what's agreed upon, that it goes into areas which does it matter really if we do know or don't know about that. There seem to be certain things regarding memory where, okay, I have an understanding of what constitutes memory, but once you start kind of branching out, is it important to know those things to have a conversation? Possibly not.
Right, and of course we're not talking about the kids game where you have the little pictures on the cards and you lay them out on the carpet and you try to match, a turtle for a turtle or a star for a star. We're not talking about that game.
We might be at some point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, basically, to create a memory, the first step is encoding. Okay, and that begins with a perception, because not everybody remembers the same event or situation the same.
It isn't that where the whole eyewitness account comes from, where they talk about, the cops or whatever, and they have eyewitness accounts, and they always say, you can have multiple eyewitness accounts, and they see the same event, but they describe them differently.
Well, that comes from that saying, perception is reality. It's not, it's your reality. And even that can change. Right. Once you start remembering extra facts or you take away bias and stuff, your memory can almost be reprogrammed that, whatever confirmation bias you had at the time might have affected the recall of that memory.
Makes sense.
And so, like I said, encoding is that first step in creating a memory. So, and that, starts with that perception. So maybe a good example, if you're thinking about it, let's think, say you're falling in love for the first time, right?
Okay.
And
please stop looking at me that way.
Like a lady.
Let's not do this.
Well, I thought we were going to start talking about potato chips or pizza with a lady. If you're falling in love with a lady, right?
All right, fair enough.
Right? Your visual system first kind of registers things you like physical features, all right? Like eye color, hair, and stuff. And that's the thing, and that's something you can experience at a distance, right? Okay. So maybe 30 feet, or if your eyesight's really good, 50 feet across the room, you can see somebody who actually looks attractive to you.
Makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
And actually, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. There's something in England called the Afghan hound principle, right? You know what Afghan hound is?
No.
It's a breed
the dog.
Yeah. That's what it is, yeah. I don't want to get in any more trouble with Afghanistan than we're already in at the moment, to be honest. Yeah. But the Afghan hound, it's like a greyhound with a big kind of Lady Gaga wig on it, right? Mm-hmm. And the Afghan hound principle is that if you're in a car with your friends and you're following another car and you see what looks like a beautiful blonde in the back seat and you just see these flowing locks of blonde hair, as time passes, you actually begin to convince yourself, oh my goodness, I bet she's really pretty and, she's got a great figure and this and this. And there comes to a point where you pull up next to that car and you look in the back seat and it turns out to be an Afghan hound. So your perception base and, combined with your confirmation bias has actually led you to believe something or convince you of something which was never a reality in the first place. And so that perception is something which can become very, very muddied, and it's different to every single person experiencing a certain situation, which is why that encoding is very, very important.
The big question is, in the car that you're in, are you in an Uber and the Afghan hound is driving the car?
No, it's not a Tesla, the car in front of you.
Okay. All right, just want to make sure.
Although if the Afghan hound can afford a Tesla, maybe she's worth dating anyway. I don't know.
Very well might be.
Yeah, we're not anti-species dating on this podcast.
No, absolutely not.
So,
we don't want to get that hashtag cancel culture. Last thing we want.
The shepherd won't fall in love with a dog, so we're canceling him.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So
cats are evil, though. Cats are evil. Yeah, we're gonna. We will go on record of saying that.
Yeah.
In Canadians.
So like I said, when your visual system registers those things like the physical features, those can change with more exposure, and environment. So say if somebody looks attractive from 30 yards away, when they get closer, they might look less attractive because you notice more certain features, like their skin might be really terrible or their hair looks terrible or whatever. So, but again, that's that initial, perception through your eyes. Now, when the other senses come into play, say like, again, we're using the whole fall in love scenario, your auditory system picks up maybe the way they talk or laugh.
Sure.
And that can, add to it, and you can give some kind of padding or a free pass to certain other senses if, say, something like the, perception overrules it. So say what looks like a really hot girl, you can let go if she's got an annoying laugh for a while, but not the other way around. Somebody with a pretty laugh, but you're not attracted to her physically, the laugh's not necessarily going to change your mind that, that's a really pretty person just because they have a nice laugh or a nice sounding voice.
Sure, and it kind of goes back to trying to sell a car. I always heard the term of a 30-foot car, right? You look at a car today in a picture on the internet and you say, that's a good looking car. It doesn't look bad, paint looks good, whatever. And 30 foot away, that car looks good. But then the closer you get, you pop the hood, you realize, hey, there's some problems with this car. When you take that deeper dive, you realize there's some problems with what I'm trying to buy here.
Yeah, and those, like I said, those extra sensory perceptions can bring in a completely different, additional subtraction to your initial perceptions. And so, even something like, again, coming into the falling in love thing, maybe the smell of that person, or if, you shook their hand, whatever, you might remember or encode things such as the shake of the hand, the touch of their skin, the smell of them, their perfume and stuff. And so, all of those sensory inputs, they actually travel to the part of your brain called the hippocampus.
Hippopotamus?
Hippopotamus. Well, it's like, hippocampus. Well, like if you've got a hippo who goes to college, where does he live? He lives on campus. Hippocampus.
Yeah, but how many hippos can they fit in a dorm?
Well, it depends how big the campus is.
Oh, fair enough.
Somewhere like UNT, probably a lot. Somewhere where I went to school, TCU, not so many hippos.
Well, yeah, because the hippos can't write a check to get into TCU.
Right, yeah. They'd have to be pretty smart to get a scholarship there as well. Mm-hmm. And, hey, listeners,
you keep telling yourself that. You keep telling yourself that.
The reason we're joking about this is because it's going to ingrain it in your mind now. You're going to remember hippocampus.
Look how tricky you're being.
So
that's that super expensive education you got. Yeah, where you stroke that check. I get it.
I got a full scholarship.
Yeah.
So all those different sensory perceptions, they integrate into a single experience. And the hippocampus, along with the frontal cortex, actually analyze all of that crap and basically decide pretty much without your conscious permission that they consider it worth remembering. And so memory, a joke about this is when I say about without your permission, there are certain things you remember and you don't understand why on earth did I remember that.
Okay.
And, I saw a meme about somebody laying on a memory foam mattress and they were trying to get to sleep, and the memory foam was speaking to them going, hey, remember that time you pissed yourself in 5th grade? It does become like if those sensory things and that.
Or remember when you went hogging in what you did to this mattress? That was terrible.
Yeah.
And the whole memory foam mattress is screaming, saying, please don't do this to me again. Please don't do this to me again.
But it's, like I said, it can almost bypass the sensory experiences, can bypass your conscious decision whether something is worth memorizing, because you don't on the spot a lot, and in those situations be like, I need to remember this, I need to remember this about this, but your brain kind of decides for you, at least the hippocampus and the frontal cortex decide that this is a memory that is worth holding on to. But it also holds on, like I said, to a bunch of crap where you're kind of like, why on earth do I remember this when I was 5 years old, when really I can't see it has any significance? You might remember, a specific drawing around a specific animal in class. And I remember in pre-K drawing around, some dinosaurs in class. And there's no reason for me to have that memory. It wasn't like the, classroom was on fire and it's like, oh, I know what I was doing, back in the Great Fire of whenever. There's no reason for me to remember that. But there's other stuff which I wish I could remember, which had a lot more significance. And, it had it at the time, and it probably still has it now, but I can't remember that many details about it. Right. So your brain's not always well, rather your subconscious brain is not really always kind of going hand in hand with the conscious thing. So if we go back to the whole encoding bit, right? The memory is stored, kind of using electricity and chemicals, and that's why I originally was going to call this podcast, chemical memory, because that's the basic function of, recording memory, I guess.
Right.
But it doesn't actually work very well if you're not paying attention. In terms of certain details will slip away. So, like you use the example of, say, if somebody's at a crime scene and you've got a witness to who did the crime, if you weren't necessarily paying attention, you don't really kind of recollect
No,
too many details. Oh, they were so tall, they were between 4'1" and 7'9". That it could have been an African American or a Chinese,
Right.
dissident, or
Yeah, but
maybe it was a squirrel. I don't know.
Sure, but if you're not paying attention, then there's reason to believe that nobody can write this down properly.
Right.
It's kind of like taking notes in college. If you're not paying attention, you're not going to take good notes.
Right.
But if you're paying attention to what's going on, you're writing the notes down. You're saying, okay, these are important points or whatever. So you're taking notes. So most of the time, we're just skipping along through life, going from place to place, going to the drive-thru, getting our food and doing whatever. Then an event happens, and we're not really paying attention to that event. And all of a sudden, we're told that we need to recall details of that event. And we realize, well, I wasn't really paying attention. I was also in a state of possibly fear, possibly, stress, whatever. So I can bastardize those details and try to fill in the blanks.
Yeah, but that comes again down to those kind of sensory perceptions, but also physiological and psychological inputs. So, again, humans through chemical memory have, a fight or flight, thing.
Sure.
And, anything which causes, through, your perceptions, say a physiological response, you're more likely to remember that instant. But if it doesn't elicit any type of physiological response, it doesn't make your heart pound, doesn't make you feel worried or anything, again, you're less likely to pay attention to it or less likely to remember it. So, what went into your short-term memory doesn't necessarily, go through to your long-term memory because it's not considered important. But again, going back to some of the stuff I do remember, I struggle to remember why on earth that would have been important.
Right.
I can't remember being that excited at drawing round a Tyrannosaurus Rex when I was 4 years old that I can still remember doing that in that class.
Right. There was something subconsciously that made you remember that. And you can't put a pin on it.
I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it could have been, it might have been events surrounding that, and that's the only thing I necessarily, remember which timestamps that. And yeah, it's a tricky kind of thing because we can't work it out ourselves without additional information. And now if somebody came back, some time traveler went back and brought us, into the future, that class, and however long it lasted, there might have been things that happened in that class which maybe have been significant, which I've forgotten, but the only thing I could timestamp in my conscious memory that I can recall is that drawing around a dinosaur. So I don't know. It gets tricky, and that's where you get, the whole process itself is known as neurobiology, and that's, comes down to, again, the chemistry of memory, which is why, like I said, I wanted to call it, chemical memory.
Yep.
But your memory RNA is like lowercase m, and, RNA, which is like rinucleic acid as opposed to DNA dinucleic acid. That actually encodes the proteins that are responsible for shaping or, like, I guess, structuring the cells in the neurons. And that, again, is how all these memories are formed.
Sure.
And everything. So, that's pretty much the basics, which, maybe even if you've studied the topic, that is pretty much what everybody agrees on.
Okay.
It's once we get past that, once you get past basic neuroscience, that's where it all starts getting a little bit grey and
a little bit fuzzy.
People with, crossing disciplines decide that some of these things are done with far more influencing factors than rather it just being chemistry.
Sure.
The environment, pressure causes you to remember events. Say, like, if you've got people around you and you've got peer pressure, you can believe just because of other people's perception, well, maybe I didn't read that properly, maybe I didn't see this properly, and you start convincing yourself what you saw wasn't what you saw.
Right. Maybe I went and saw episode 8 of Star Wars and I really liked it.
Yeah, no, that's not a good example, because I don't think anybody's going to agree with that. Well, some people might.
Yeah.
Once again, sorry, George Lucas, but
yeah, maybe there's 3 people out there that thought that was a good movie.
So we're going to skip from that immediately to the Stump the Shepherd section.
Oh, here we go again.
And this is, this is one where it covers topics which, again, I think people have a view on, but maybe have not been that interested or that informed to really know the answer. But everybody's kind of heard of these type of terms or things, but it's probably been misconstrued through movies and just bad literature and everything else, or just people like us who have probably guessed on it. And, in the past.
So we're here to clear all this up. We're going to explain to everybody how to clear this up.
Well, as far as the first page of Google can clear up anything.
Yeah.
Right. So first of all, how long do you think short-term memory lasts? At least in definition of short-term memory.
Okay, short-term memory. I'm going to go with 48 hours.
No. You see, you can hold about 7 specific images or events or objects in your brain for about 20 to 30 seconds. Once you get past that, you either forget the exact details, you'll forget numbers off of that in terms of the number of objects, the color of an object, the size of an object. Right. After 20 to 30 seconds, everything you saw and everything which came in sensory, it starts dropping off. So if you take something like a phone number, right, it's easier to break a phone number down into sections.
Sure.
Rather than it is just remembering the individual numbers in a long string.
And that's why they've always done that. You got the area code, you've got the exchange, you got the last 4 digits. In America, you told me what your phone number was over in England years ago. I'm like, that doesn't even look like a phone number.
Right.
What are you talking about? And you said, well, this is the way phone numbers were over there. And I said, well, I couldn't memorize that phone number because it was always easy to memorize 7 digits, breaking it into 3 digits and 4 digits over here before you had to put the area code in front of it.
Yeah.
And then most of the time you're like, okay, well, in North Tarrant County, everybody had 817, so that was kind of easy to throw 817 in front of it. But no, that makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense.
Now the next question is bit of an unfair one to ask, unlike normally.
Because you're always super fair with these questions.
Yeah. Because I ask questions which are a yes or no, but both answers are wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. So and this is one where I actually found, even within a few, I guess, respected bodies, that there was quite a significant difference to the answer. Okay. Depending who was weighing in, what peer studies they'd reviewed, everything else. You really had to, and this was something which I actually had to study a little bit further before I understood why there was this kind of differentiation. And it's what are the 4 main or kind of basic different types of memory?
The 4
basic types of memory. There's 4 basic and there's some subsets. But the 4 basic ones.
You're kidding me, right? I mean,
we've already talked about 3 of them, but you can't remember them, ironically.
No, apparently it was more than 30 seconds ago, so I can't remember this. So I'm gonna go with E, none of the above. No, that's wrong. Because I don't have a clue of what you're asking.
Now you have sensory, which is brief. It lasts for about 3 seconds.
Oh, okay. So this is the angle we're going.
Memory.
Okay, sensory memory. Okay,
and that we talked about that first. Remember about what starts with the encoding? It's the perception through sensory input, and that lasts for about 3 seconds before you make up your mind. Just like if you walk in a room, you'll make up your mind whether it's hot or cold. Right. You make up your mind whether somebody's pretty or not pretty.
Okay. So this goes to the traditional 5 senses, right?
Yeah. Within that, I mean, so sensory memory, and so that normally lasts for about 3 seconds before you stop paying attention to it because you've already made your mind up what those things are according to your senses. Right. Now.
Okay, so what about some kind of memory where you memorize a data set? Kind of like what we were talking about with phone numbers.
Yeah.
Is that one of these?
That's more of a subset of one of these four main ones.
See, you're getting so difficult now. you know,
Well, this is what happens when you can't find people who agree with each other on the internet.
Yeah, but you're making sure that you can stump me, and now the questions are getting so hard that I feel like I'm on Final Jeopardy right now.
Yeah, which we have agreed you'll never get invited on. So, yeah.
Oh,
Now short-term memory. We mentioned that one, right?
Yeah.
The thing for 20 to 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. So we have sensory memory. Yeah. We have short-term memory. So now I'm going to go with long-term memory.
Long-term.
Oh, look at me go.
Yeah, look at that one.
Okay.
So As a participation trophy in that one.
Yeah. There we go. So
and the other one
is
and the other one, the main one, is a working memory, and that that overlaps a little bit with short-term memory. And that's what you need to remember to perform a task. So say if I asked you to do something, I said, take this out of the refrigerator and then get this out of here, and then, maybe go put some butter from the other refrigerator on, the bread and make this sandwich, then heat it up in the microwave and bring it back to me. You remember the information to perform that task. So it's working memory.
Right, but is this the same problem that we have whenever you get something out of the freezer and the instructions of how to cook it is
you have to
on
keep
the
looking
package, and so you take everything out, you put it on the pan because it says unwrap the package, put it on a nonstick pan, preheat the oven to 350. And then you do all that, you throw the package away, and then you're looking at the pan, you preheated the oven to 350, you put everything in, and then you realize, oh, what's next? Do I need to do anything in between here, or do I just drag it out and eat it?
I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because it was a little bit about what we were talking about before, where other factors come into play.
Okay.
So with your working memory in terms of having to remember a set of instructions, depending upon the importance of, say, you carrying out that task, your ability to be able to memorize those things. So like if, say, your boss said to you, Shepard, go do this, you're more likely, because of what you perceive as the importance of following those instructions correctly, following it correctly, even if there's more steps in it than like the example you gave of making yourself something. Because if you mess up, all right, I'll go reread the instructions, and, I'm the only, recipitor if something goes wrong with it, perhaps. And so, the importance of being able to remember something psychologically and in terms of peers and everything else actually changes your ability to be able to remember something.
Okay.
So that's why I said it starts getting into gray areas where you have factors, environmental, peer pressure, all this other stuff coming in. And that's why these four main types of memory, when they start splitting off into different types of short-term memory, different types of sensory memory, etc., there seems to be a little bit of conflict across different disciplines as to which correctly defines what constitutes those subsets of those four types of memory.
So is that why I can walk into a room and I can say, I came into this room to get something.
Right.
And I don't know why I'm in this room and what I'm supposed to get.
Yeah. And I remember actually, I can't remember who the comedian is, which is great because we keep giving so many examples of stuff we can't remember in this podcast.
And here we go. You can't remember something.
And you said, you know that?
Oh, look at you drawing the blank here.
Yeah. No, I was trying to remember how he said it. He goes, you remember those times when you just walk into a room and forget what you went in there for? He goes, I wonder if that's how dogs spend their entire lives.
Sure.
Yeah. And again, it comes down to like, well, there's not that much important in a pet dog's life, a domesticated dog, that it really has to remember. And so it goes through most of its life very reactionary, and it only learns certain things based upon the reaction from remembering or performing certain tasks, like reacting to keywords or whatever. And we'll get into that later. But, if it had honestly been that important to you, then you would not have walked into that room and forgotten about it. But then again, we say that, and you think of how many people who get to an airport and they've forgotten the passport, and it's like, what was the one thing which is going to stop you from flying? It's not going to be because you didn't pack the shampoo and conditioner or the almonds you like to snack on late at night Why is it you forgot the one most important thing where without that, everything else you did was completely meaningless?
Right, but what you're leaving out is the distractions. So people get distracted.
Well, yeah,
because
but then
they're
why is the
trying
priority not there?
Yeah, but they're trying to accomplish a task, right? They go into that room. They say, I got to go in here. I've got to get my wallet and my car keys and my phone.
Right.
And then they go in, they grab their wallet and their car keys, and then their wife says, "Hey, did you take the trash out?" And you say, "Well, no, I didn't take the trash out. I'll go do this." Then they go take the trash out. They hop in the car. They leave. They realize they forgot their phone because they were distracted because they had step 1, 2, and 3. They made it through 1 and 2, but then they got distracted. They forgot to accomplish 3 because there was some kind of distraction there that alleviated them from the fact that they had to grab their phone.
I think that depends on the type of person, because I think, talking about myself, I actually prioritize, not necessarily consciously, what I need, and along each step, the importance of that to my overall goal. And so, the bottom part of the list might be things where if I didn't remember to do them, it wouldn't affect my overall goal. It might diminish away from the experience or stop me being able to do certain things, but I would know that, not taking my passport, not having the car keys, not having my phone would lead to such a detrimental effect that, those type of things I never tend to forget. But you get some people whose brains do absolutely not prioritize anything else. And like I said, they'll remember shampoo, but not their passport. Yeah. They'll remember to bring a packet of tissues, but not the keys to get into the, holiday home they're going to visit.
Right.
And so, that's those type of brains, and why people think like that, again, goes off into a whole different realm of psychology, which isn't specifically down to, obviously it is about memory, but why some people fail to remember things which are important, whereas others, subconsciously can actually make that list. Again, there's lots of different theories with that.
Makes sense.
So, and this is a question I'm going to ask you, and the reason I'm asking you this one is because I know you've heard of it, but we're presented with this purely through, I guess, media, through movies and stuff, and so we believe this is something which is definitely a thing, but we probably don't realize it's not so much of a thing as we think it is. So I'm going to ask you this: is photographic memory a real thing?
No.
Yes and
no. It's not.
It's yes and no. It doesn't mean you remember everything.
No,
right?
Because I
just the things you pay attention to.
Right, and I went through this because when I want to, I have a very good memory. You know this about me, but I always thought I had a photographic memory until I kind of looked into that and realized that doesn't really truly exist. You have a different way of remembering things.
Well, some people have something called an eidetic memory.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like photographic memory, and things they actually pay attention to, they can pretty much remember every exact detail to a point where even if regular people stood there and studied it for hours would still not be able to recollect that information.
And so photographic memory is a easy way to describe that eidetic memory.
Yeah, and it's actually like between 2 and 10% of people have some form of eidetic memory.
Sure.
And, it just means that encoding, as we started off talking about, that occurs in the things you pay attention to, but it's kind of just on a higher level, and for whatever reason. Now, if you'd have said like 0.02% of people have eidetic imagery, that kind of photographic memory, as you want to call it, then you'd think, okay, then I can kind of believe that. But up to 10%, that's when it starts being, all right, well, maybe I don't believe in photographic memory that much, because that's surely 1 in 10 people is too high of a percentage for people who are good at remembering things.
But you have people like you and I, and we have pretty good memories when we decide that we're actually going to care about it or focus on it and say, hey, I want to learn something here. Yeah. I actually want to tune everything out. I want to say, hey, this is something I want to learn something about. Right. And you read it, you watch it, you study it or whatever, we'll remember it.
Yeah.
But I know there's a lot of people that they have that same feeling, right? They want to read it, they want to study it, they want to learn it, and they got to read it over and over and over again to try to ingrain it in their head. And that kind of sucks for those people that really want to get in there and study it and learn it, versus somebody like me or you who we can say, yeah, here's something I actually want to learn about. And so we just kind of blink our eyes and we say, okay, I'm going to learn this right now, and then we learn it and we remember it.
But that's also, again, comes back to, for whatever reason, people can't encode stuff even if they do care about it, because other factors come into play of the importance of not remembering that, and the stress, and it adds stress, or depending on the environment they're in when they're trying to memorize it. Again, there's a lot of things which come in, which is why people don't always remember things the same way, even if they don't have an eidetic memory, that some people can remember things better than others just because of the environment they're in or the importance to remembering it.
No, I think it's more the importance of remembering it. It's the same reason why I can remember a lot of stuff, a lot of random facts that are just stored in my brain that are never going to go away. But my wife can tell me what she's going to do tomorrow, and I won't remember it.
Right.
We went to Orange Beach, Alabama. Here, this is, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago. The passcode for the, what do you call it, the condo or whatever is 68681094 pound.
Right.
I still remember that.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to do with this information, right? But it's stored in my head. I realized that I needed to go ahead and memorize that code because I didn't want to look in my phone to know what the little keypad was to get into the room, because we didn't have a swipe card like you have at a normal hotel, right? But I'm pretty sure tonight my wife probably told me I needed to stop by the store and get something, and I couldn't tell you what I'm supposed to go to the store and get.
Yeah, I mean,
right
I can
now.
still remember. I mean, I don't think, I mean, I can't tell you how many years it's been since I learned the cosine rule, but I still remember a squared plus b squared equals 2bc, sorry, a squared plus b squared minus 2bc cosine a.
Yeah, or what was that quadratic equation? It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, well, I don't know why. I mean, I've never used it. It's not like
negative,
it's,
whatever. And I've tried to clear that out of my head.
Yeah.
But I memorized that.
Yeah.
And you memorize these bizarre things. And a lot of people, they struggle with it.
Yeah.
They truly struggle with trying to memorize some of this stuff. And they say, well, why can't I learn this?
Sure.
I've been blessed that I can learn that stuff when I want to know something, and I write it down in my head. I've always said I have this like spiral notebook in my head that I just make these notes on, and I can refer back to this spiral notebook.
A kind of rotary card system.
It's old school analog, right? And I can just refer back to that, and I can not think about it for years, and then somebody asks me a question about something that I know I've written down in that spiral notebook, and I just go and flip the pages back. I'm like, oh, here it all is, and I've got it.
Yeah.
And not to sound bigger than anybody, because that's not what I'm trying to do here, but some people are blessed with that.
Yeah.
They really are. But at the same respect, I can honestly tell you right now, looking at you right now, I don't remember what I had for dinner last night.
Right.
Because I didn't write it down in the spiral notebook, because I don't care.
Right.
Maybe there is some of that. You just don't care about certain things. You just forget about it. Mm-hmm. You say, this isn't important information. And unfortunately, with that look in memory, you choose what's important.
Sure.
You choose that, hey, this is something important, this is what I want to remember, this is happening. I don't see any importance here. I'm not going to remember.
Right. Now, do you think it's easier to remember good or bad experiences?
Bad.
Yeah. Cause,
Absolutely.
Yeah, because actually remembering bad times becomes more natural. And it's actually got quite a bit to do with evolution. And we recall them easier because of the effect the bad experience they had and that whole cause and effect thing. And we learn to try and avoid that. It's hard to sometimes replicate good situations because sometimes it was, this magical alignment of everything and it just turned out good and it is enjoyable. And it's sometimes harder to replicate that. And also you find that when you try and repeat that, it's maybe not as good as the first time.
Yeah.
But, in terms of bad experiences, we also subconsciously act to avoid those situations. Whereas to have good experiences, we consciously try and recreate those situations.
Right.
And the subconscious, has a greater power of kind of the things it keeps and how it affects you without you having to consciously go through that information. And so that's why, bad situations, tend to be more memorable. But it's also possible to suppress bad situations if they cause that much stress, that much physiological effect, whether through learning yourself how to suppress it or just because, again, you subconsciously suppress it. You can actually almost eliminate certain bad experiences, out of, I guess, what your brain is deciding is necessity because it's bad for you to remember those things.
Yeah, but sure, think about history. I mean, we always joke about history is always written by the winners, right? But if you read history of anything, there's a lot of bad stuff in history. There's wars that were fought, whether they were won or lost. Lots of bad stuff in there. And we always remember a lot of the bad stuff in history, no matter if it's the winner that wrote the bad stuff, because it seems always easier to remember the bad things. So much easier.
Right. Yeah. And I wanted to switch actually because I know I kind of brought up that comedian joke about the dog earlier about memory.
That we can't remember, by the way, the comedian.
I couldn't remember the exact... Well, no.
Oh, who's the comedian?
He was a nobody.
No, who's the comedian?
He was a nobody.
Okay.
Actually, I probably don't even know his name because I think I actually just read the quote.
Oh.
Not just as in just now, but I actually read the quote however many years ago. I'm not even sure if it said the comedian. So. Yeah,
so listen
but it'd
to
be irrelevant.
Listen to you. It could be a woman, right?
No.
It could be
women aren't funny.
Ooh. Ooh. Hashtag cancel culture.
That's what it said on the internet earlier. So
okay, fair enough.
I didn't write that. I'm just repeating what I read.
Yeah.
So if we get into the whole thing in memory and animals, it's it really changes from animal to animal in terms of what type of memories they keep, whether it's short term, long term, whether it starts bridging into chemotropic reactions, and so it's not really necessary conscious or even subconscious memory. It's something they just kind of do in a reaction to stimuli. But so there's a lot of animals like mice, squirrels, dogs, elephants, and one of my least favorite animals, I think I said on
cats.
No, chimpanzees. Remember I told you I want to punch a chimpanzee in the face?
I know. I would like to see a cat and a chimpanzee get in a fight and see which ones we're going to bet on.
Well, we know the chimpanzee is going to win that unless we give the cat a knife.
I don't know about that.
And opposing thumbs.
No, I don't know about that. That we need to find somebody in some foreign country, some third world country that might set that fight up.
I mean, like Mexico.
Maybe.
But the thing is,
Let's make a note of this and not follow up on it like we do everything else.
Well, you see, the thing is, I couldn't organize it because I dislike chimpanzees so much. I'd probably drug it so it would never win a fight, even against a moth or something. And then I'd be like, the cat's obviously the most superior fighting machine.
If I'm responsible for bringing the cats, I just won't bring the cat because I'm just going to let him off on the side of the road and
Shepherd,
say, run free.
Why is this cat drunk?
Yeah.
I'm never clear.
Exactly.
Yeah. But anyway, so like that section of animals, as well as most birds, not all birds are smart, by the way. They're capable.
Except ducks.
Yeah, they're capable of a conscious learning of the world around them, which is called semantic memory.
Okay.
So, all the stimuli from their senses play up, I guess, most of the impact in the memory and what they learn. They don't reason something.
Gotcha.
Cause and effect is very subconscious. They're not like writing notes with their non-opposable thumbs in their imaginary notebook or rotary system in their head.
Gotcha.
They use this semantic memory, but there's actually no evidence that they can remember the past or plan for the future. So the cause and effect thing they learn is almost entirely chemical memory. There's no reason of like, oh yeah, the last time, I put my head in that refrigerator, my nose got cold and it started aching, or the last time I ate too many ice cubes, I got brain freeze.
Right.
It almost, that cause and effect almost immediately goes into that chemical memory whereby it's never a conscious thing. Whereas we recollect, okay, well, the last time I did this, it hurt a lot. And that's why we remember it. It's not necessarily, for the most part, an instant, reaction to something. Most of the time we kind of react to it through a little bit of reasoning of remembering what happened. And the same thing when we're planning for something like, the dog couldn't get into something and it wanted to get to, say, some food, it will use methods of trial and error.
Right.
And then what works becomes
old school logic.
Yeah, it becomes the chemical memory, whereas we might actually reason that, okay, because you could watch a dog try and get in something, and if you were watching it, you'd be like, yeah, I know that's not going to work, but the dog will just keep going on, through trial and error till it finds something which works. Whereas we would actually think, well, I know that's not going to work if I try that, because that's going to be a worse attempt than the first thing I did.
Well,
so
that's a bold statement, because I think there's a lot of humans that probably wouldn't even go through that.
Yeah, I'm sure. But there's, dogs will actually react to trigger words, which is why dogs do the whole sit, blah, blah, blah. But we have to train them, or most of the time they're trained through the reward system of being petted or given a treat.
Pavlov it did the whole study with the bell. When the bell rang, the dogs knew that they were going to get fed. So that's always based off of.
Yeah, you actually want to look a little bit deeper into that whole thing. There's actually a bit of a nefarious story behind that involving a metronome.
Don't spoil that
causing
for me.
Bad physiological effects.
Don't spoil that for me. Yeah. Stop. I just picture this nice German Shepherd that... that the bell rings and Pavlov says, "Oh, I rang the bell. You get some food."
And the salivating.
And the dog's like, "Oh, I get some food." And that's it. Yeah. So let's leave it at that.
I mean,
let's not spoil this.
I mean, the basic lesson from that story, the Pavlovian effect, most people know, but actually some of the deeper studies behind that kind of get into, again, some of the psychological stuff and other ways you can affect the way that animals react to things. Like I said, it went a little bit of a nefarious route, a bit like a kind of a Nazi experimentation camp at some point down there. It's not necessarily a rabbit hole to get down, but
sounds like revisionist history, and we are not going to do that here.
Right. But dogs, they can learn patterns of behavior, again through loose kind of cause and effect scenarios, but they're mainly stimulated by, I guess, what you'd want to call like chemically inherent memories, such as fight, flight, hunger, or whether they want something like they want.
Well, and they always want rewards. I remember when I was in high school, the drug dogs at high school. Yeah. Somebody found out that the reward for a drug dog was a tennis ball. So what they did was they stacked a locker full of tennis balls, put a little bit of weed in there. The drug dog hit on that. They opened the locker up, and all kinds of tennis balls come falling out of that locker. Drove the dog nuts because he was only used to getting one tennis ball. But he's thinking, I smelled just a tiny little bit of weed, and now I've got 100 tennis balls. Right. The dog went nuts. We all laughed about it.
Yeah.
So there's always ways around that reward system.
Now, you'd think with certain drugs, like, I don't know, cocaine or something, the reward for the drug dog would actually be sniffing the cocaine.
Possibly.
Yeah, the reward is finding it in itself.
Yeah. Exactly.
Now,
you just look and you say, "Hey, Buster, come here. You can have a little hit off this. You can have a little sniff. You found it. you get to share a little bit.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Let me roll this joint up and let you smoke a little bit of this. Good dog.
Yeah, I'm not sure that scenario
All right.
plays
Well,
out.
yeah, that's my pretend world.
Now, with mammals specifically, I mean, they don't follow, I guess, that 4 main part of memories that humans have. Now, once you get outside of mammals, in the animal
what are
kingdom,
the 4 main parts of memory? Because I've already forgot about them.
sensory, short-term, working, and long-term.
Oh, okay.
Right.
All right.
So-
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Now, many
Because like most of our podcasts, I'm not paying that
Right,
much
yeah.
attention, so I've already forgot about
it
those.
was past the 20 to 30 second limit.
Yeah.
Mammals, they kind of have the short term and the long term, and they have something else called specialized memory. Now, outside of mammals, once you get into insects again, that's when you're starting to get into chemotropics and not really a central nervous system that allows for any type of reason or learned behavior whatsoever outside
Gotcha.
of it. Will keep trying doing something, and as long as the stimuli doesn't kill it, that it will continue doing the same thing over and over again, regardless of how many times it's failed, just simply because of that chemical memory. It doesn't learn anything by default. No cause and effect. There's absolutely no rationale in there whatsoever.
Right.
So I mean, mammals as such, they tend to have the short term and the specialized memories, but they also have a limit on what type of information they store, for specialized types of memory. But once they remember them, they tend to be stored in a longer term. So say, if you teach your dog, to hate, everybody who isn't wearing jeans, it can be taught that they're going to be aggressive towards everybody who isn't wearing jeans. Eventually,
Right.
It's a very specialized type of memory. Now, it might take you a long time to teach
Or-
the dog what's the difference between slacks and jeans or whatever, but theoretically, it can be taught that you can get your dog to be aggressive to everybody who doesn't wear jeans.
Sure, but there could also be something that is an adverse reaction to that memory
Yeah.
because somebody that was wearing jeans
And comes up and punches him in the face,
could have
yeah.
done something bad
Yeah.
to that
Mhm.
dog.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden,
Yeah.
everybody wearing jeans
Yeah.
is mean
Oh, yeah.
to me. So I'm mad at everybody that's wearing jeans, but that same person could have jeans on, walk up to the dog.
Yeah.
The dog is growling, whatever. They walk away. They go throw a pair of shorts on, come back up to the dog. Now the dog's happy.
Yeah.
I've seen this firsthand when I was younger. Had a just super friendly dog, loved everybody. But I remember my uncle, who is now deceased, wore like this black pair of combat boots, almost kind of like a pair of Doc Martens, but more combat bootish, and kicked my dog when I was younger. And so me and my family, I'm young. Me and my family go out of town. We ask the neighbors, "Hey, will you feed the dog?" So the neighbor comes over and just happens to have on a black pair of what kind of looks like combat boots. And my dog, who knows this person, is growling and snarling at them. And she, woman, by the way, she's trying to figure out, why is the dog so upset? What am I doing different? Takes off the boots, and now my dog's happy.
Yeah.
And he's totally fine with her without wearing the
Yeah.
boots, but remembers, I got kicked by somebody wearing boots that
Right.
look just like that.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get kicked again, so I'm being defensive.
Sure. And that's, again, why, there's not really much of any kind of logic going on, because
Sure.
even at a very young age, I mean, like infants learn the concept of object permanence, of like, where you hide something and it's initially think, oh, it's disappeared. And one of the key kind of marks in a child's development is that realization of object permanence. It doesn't mean the object's disappeared. It just means it's
It's a
hidden.
whole game of peekaboo.
Whereas, so, like a lot of mammals don't, grasp that concept. They think if they can't see it, it's like when you pretend throw the ball, they think it's thrown because they can't comprehend, or there is no comprehension or attempted comprehension
that somebody would fake me out.
Somebody would fake me out,
Exactly.
But dolphins and elephants are a bit of an exception to the rule in terms of how their memories work. I mean, an elephant.
It's because they're gray and slimy.
Well, I mean, an elephant can display, what we were talking about earlier, the kind of eidetic, photographic type memory, but you have to think, well, how many things does an elephant have to remember? In the natural habitat, it's
right.
It doesn't really have many predators. Most of its terrain is the same, and so how many things really does it have to remember? Whereas with dolphins, I mean, dolphins can recognize themselves in a mirror, which is a bit of a mystery to me because I think they all look the same.
Yeah,
pretty much, right?
Oh, they do.
But they also have an advanced language system, which will actually develop. They have different dialects to that language, and that if one dolphin meets a dolphin from a different school of dolphins, as such. Although that's not the right word for a collection of dolphins, is it? It's not a school
probably
of dolphins.
Not.
It's something else of dolphins.
It's like a group of flippers, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, but
anyway,
but no, that goes back to like when I've got onto you before, when you've been around your British friends, and they've come over to my house, and you and one of your British friends start talking. I can't understand a word y'all are saying. Because you get into that dialect. You have certain words that kind of go back and forth. You're speaking English, but can't understand a word you're saying. So, it's same thing.
Mm. Now, I know we were talking about, and we've mentioned actually multiple times, about forgetting certain things. What do you know?
Did we say that? Because
sure
I already forgot.
I remember looking it up. I can't remember. Well, no, we did. We forgot.
I definitely forgot.
No, we talked about forgetting things.
Are there four? There are four types of memory? Because I've already forgot about those again. Even though you reminded me, I've already forgot about those.
So, there are methods to bring back memories you've forgotten, depending on how, I guess, important your brain and your subconscious considered those memories.
Are we going to talk about hypnosis?
Hypnotic regression, because when we talk about hypnosis, you might think about, going to see a hypnotist to try and stop you from smoking or to bark like a dog on a stage in front of people. But, hypnotic regression basically takes account of the fact that the mind, filters out certain experiences out of the normal memory, and it does it automatically. Again, it's like very difficult to consciously suppress or forget something. In fact, it almost has the opposite effect, because you're thinking about what you're trying to forget, and it just repeats so many times that you actually end up remembering it more than you wanted to. And so, you can suppress specific memories and experiences, but, with hypnotic regression, a lot of those memories can be accessed or revisited. But again, it comes in with some controversy, and I think we mentioned on one of our previous podcasts about, falsely implanting memories of incidences that never occurred, or slightly changing the details of that, so that again, somebody you absolutely 100% convinced you saw a crime scene, a hypnotist could maybe throw some doubt in there that perhaps that person, wasn't as tall as you thought they were, drew the gun with the left hand rather than the right hand, didn't have a gun at all, can actually adjust your recollections. I mean, it's not without its controversy, because it can be manipulated.
Right. You could have let's say a media machine get behind memories and say, there were 3 movies that came out in the Star Wars saga made by Disney in the Skywalker saga that were good. And make you try to believe they were actually good when they weren't.
That would take some pretty deep hypnosis. You see, I think what you're talking about is subliminal programming in terms of, where if a message is repeated, often enough that you start believing it.
Yeah,
and
these are good.
Yeah,
these are good movies. These are really good.
But
they're great movies.
But again,
not only are they great, if you don't like them, then there's something wrong with you. These are great, and so you need to get behind these movies.
But that's also something which, people actually misunderstand when you talk about subliminal messaging. I mean, sometimes it can be hidden in plain sight. And again, I think this is something we spoke about on a previous podcast about flash frames.
Yeah.
The use of flash frames and the use of product placement.
Right.
And
even in the movies, the whole "let's go out to
yeah.
the movies,"
Lobby.
and
Yeah,
they've got the Coke and they got the popcorn. Like, I want a Coke and a popcorn.
But people assume that subliminal is something hidden, and it just kind of builds up to give you a message. But like I said, a lot of subliminal messaging can actually be in plain sight. Like I said, like product placement, or like you said about if it's repeated enough times. Oh yeah, these are the 3 best movies in the Star Wars trilogies. There comes to a point now, depending on how much bias you have, subliminal messaging might not work. Okay,
right.
So because we hate the Skywalker trilogy so much, that's never going to work on us.
The sequels.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now with George Lucas or Disney, you're listening to this, which I highly doubt. If you want to pay us money, next episode we'll say it is the best trilogy ever written.
Absolutely.
We will sell out in an instant. We just want you to know
that is 100% correct.
So, like I said,
we will sell out.
Yeah. So the hypnotic regression thing, like I said, it's a facet of hypnotism, but you don't want to confuse it with hypnotism because it branches off into very different things. I mean, hypnotic regression, you can use that in criminology, and there has been plenty of cases in court where the evidence given by hypnotic regression has been very pertinent to a case.
Right, and by the way, there's always been cases where they've convinced people that they've committed crimes they haven't done.
Yeah.
Which might be a podcast, but we're going to forget about that because, I mean, we're talking about memory, and we're definitely going to forget about why we should actually talk about that.
Now, I did actually want to end on how you can improve your memory. Because
most
people want to be able to improve their memory.
We should, in this podcast, try to give some kind of service to our listeners.
Right.
So how can we improve on our memory?
Right. Now, the most basic way actually is
I already forgot what you said.
is living a healthier lifestyle. So, I mean, things such as diet, exercise, better quality sleep, I mean, that will actually enable your brain to work more effectively and recollect information.
Diet, exercise, better quality of sleep.
Yeah. So those are
three things I need to look at. So can't do any of those.
Right.
So help me out. Right. How can I do something other than those?
Well, I mean, there's things which obviously affect your memory, such as heavy drinking, but that's not always a bad thing. I always say, like,
I've never drank any alcohol except for Alien Ale that our buddy Jason DeBoard from Martian Margaritas brings to us. Those are the only beers that you and I have ever drank.
Well, I mean, I always have
to the best of my recollection, which I have a terrible memory apparently.
I always say to people that, if I said something offensive or did something, when I drank some alcohol, take it up with me again when I get drunk, because I can't remember.
Hey,
take it up with drunk me. I'm not responsible.
Right.
Sober me is not responsible for drunk me.
Not to go off into the music aspect, but I remember the song by Evanescence. It's Call Me When You're Sober.
Don't remember.
There's a good message behind that. Same thing with the band Lit. My Own Worst Enemy.
Oh, right, yeah.
And there's a line in that song.
I can't believe the things I said when I was drunk. I didn't mean to call you that.
Yeah. It's the same thing. I mean, look, I am super guilty of that. I may or may not have had some beverages that caused me to say some things that I regret. I think we all do at a certain point. And in those that don't have those beverages and don't say that, you know what? Good on you. But sometimes we say things that we do regret and we don't really mean them.
Well, I can't actually remember if I actually agreed to do these podcasts. You told me I did, but I don't know if you made it up.
That's a secret.
But anyway, you asked.
I fooled you, and so that goes back to your bad memory.
Yeah, you asked, or I may have been drunk. I can't remember. But you did ask what other things you can do, obviously, to improve your memory. Now, mental exercises, like word games, puzzles, any type of that stuff, which keeps your mental skills and memory sharp.
Gotcha.
It's proven to delay or even, partially offset Alzheimer's.
Is that why they have all the puzzles in like old folks' homes?
Yeah,
trying to get them to do puzzles.
Yeah.
So because you've got like 100-piece puzzle and you can put a bunch of old folks on there, and it's like is that to improve their memory, or is that to give them something to do for a week?
Well, there's two things from this. One, after doing a little bit of research on Alzheimer's, I forgot how to spell Alzheimer's correctly. But also...
Is it because you might have early onset Alzheimer's?
I don't think so.
Okay.
How would I know?
Well, of course you don't know.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah. You have it.
I might welcome it to an extent. I don't know.
I am not a doctor, but I am telling you right now, you have early onset Alzheimer's.
You never have to give that disclaimer.
Yeah. Okay.
That's just like that. We're not experts, but
But
anyway, with Alzheimer's, it's interesting you actually brought that up. But do
you remember what you just said?
About what?
Exactly. You have Alzheimer's.
Well,
so go ahead.
There's between 75 and 84-year-olds, 17%, which is roughly about 1/6, have Alzheimer's. And once you get to 85 plus, 32%, or roughly a third of people have Alzheimer's. So I mean, it's definitely something which affects huge proportions. So any of those type of exercises they can do to either delay or offset it is very, very important. But certain traits of Alzheimer's can actually kick in even in the 40s and 50s. If you're somebody who does a repetitive job where you can almost go into, pilot mode, you just don't really...
Autopilot
mode. Yeah, you don't kind of pay much attention to it, and your brain's not really being challenged. You always use comfort zones. You watch comfort TV shows where there's so much imposition. There's no thought required to work out the plot or who did it or whatever, that your brain can actually start declining. You lose that kind of, I think it's called neuroplasticity, but we'll get onto that on another podcast when I want to talk about learning, different methods of learning.
Yeah, we'll never remember that.
I will that one actually, because I wrote that down. I mean, it can actually
But
help.
you forgot where you wrote that down on the piece of paper.
Oh, no, I put it in my phone. I texted myself.
Well, it's good that you have somebody that actually texts
I've got that little annoying number on my text, which has a 1 on it. And so, until I hit that button and clear it, I'm going to remember that. I need to write that
look
up.
at you go.
Yeah. So anyway, like I said, it's important for people to try and work on improving their memory, challenging their brain, because loss of memory can occur way earlier than most people think.
And let's, all kidding aside, I mean, this is a serious problem. I mean, it really is, and it's kind of sad when you see people get it in your examples, even in 40s or 50s, and especially in the later stages of life where the memory goes. Yeah. And you sit there and kind of going back to my example of you walk into a room and you say, why'd I come into this room? Yeah. That sucks. Yeah. I mean, it really sucks. And the people that suffer from this, they know it sucks. They're proud. Mm-hmm. They don't want to say that, their memory's shot and they're having problems, but it sucks. It really sucks. And not to put a downer on the end of the podcast, but it does suck. And we hate to see that happen with people, but it does. Yeah. It really does.
On the plus side, though, in this age of COVID...
Oh, that's right. See, I forgot
to mention that it was the age of COVID.
I forgot to mention that we are in the age of COVID. There's one thing.
The stay-at-home...
It happens to the best of us.
The stay-at-home orders, continue, or there's a lot of lockdowns that, the people with Alzheimer's, if they're having to do too much social distancing, when it comes to Easter, they can at least hide their own eggs.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a benefit of Alzheimer's during this age of COVID.
But even if you talk about that age of COVID, if you take away some of those outside influences, the ability for them to go and do things and interact or whatever, and you limit everything to parking somebody in their house, then eventually you got the TV. And it's the same crap on TV all day long. Hell, it's the same stuff that we talk about on the podcast most of the time. I mean, we have different topics, but we talk about a lot of the same stuff. And you park somebody somewhere, and they're trying to get their faculties about them, trying to figure out something to do. They're going to go nuts. They're going to go absolutely nuts.
That's not a PC term, by the way, going nuts.
Oh. So write that down because I'm going to forget that I can't say they're nuts.
Somebody with Alzheimer's has gone nuts. I don't know. I don't know.
Absolutely. And so with that said about going nuts, thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Wolf and the Shepherd. Apparently, I've gone nuts here, and I probably forgot about everything that I've said. So we'll catch you on the next one.